When I first met Ella, I didn't expect her to change my life. She was just another face in our English literature class, quiet, focused, always with a notebook full of neat handwriting. I was the kind of student who did things last minute, relied on charm more than planning, and thought caffeine could fix everything. But when our professor announced we'd need study partners for the final exam, fate, or maybe bad luck, paired me with her. At first, I thought it would be awkward. She seemed too serious, too disciplined for someone like me. But when we sat down in the university cafe that first afternoon, something about her presence felt calming. She smiled shyly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "So," she said softly, "should we start with a poetry section or novels?" I shrugged, pretending to think. "Let's start with poetry. It's shorter." She laughed, a light, genuine laugh that made me want to hear it again. That's when I realized this might not be such a bad partnership after all. We met every other day, always at the same table near the window. She'd bring her highlighters and sticky notes. I'd bring snacks and jokes. Somehow, we balanced each other perfectly. Her structure, my spontaneity. One afternoon, as we went over Shakespeare's sonnets, I noticed how her eyes lit up when she explained metaphors. "It's like," she said, her fingers tracing invisible shapes in the air, "love isn't just a feeling. It's a language." I stared at her, more focused on her words than the textbook. "A language?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "Every action, every look, it says something. You just have to know how to read it." Maybe I was imagining it, but in that moment, I felt like she was talking directly to me. The way she looked at me, soft, thoughtful, it sent a strange warmth through my chest. But I pushed it aside. She was my study partner, not someone I should be thinking about that way. Still, every time we met, I caught myself noticing the little things. How she hummed quietly while reading, how she always wrote my name neatly in her notes, how she smiled when I brought her favorite caramel latte. As the days passed, our study sessions turned into something more. We'd start with textbooks and end with conversations about dreams, fears, and what we wanted from life. She wanted to travel. "To teach English abroad," she said one night as we walked back to the dorms. "Maybe in Italy or Japan. I want to help people learn the language that changed my life." I smiled. "You sound like a future professor already." She rolled her eyes. "And you sound like someone who hasn't started the essay due tomorrow." I laughed, and she did too. That sound, it started to feel like home. As the final exam approached, we spent more time together. We studied late into the night, surrounded by open books, half-finished coffees, and the quiet hum of the library. There were moments when the world outside didn't exist, just her voice, her laugh, the soft glow of her laptop reflecting in her eyes. One night, I walked her back to her dorm after a long session. It was chilly, and she hugged her books close. "Thanks for helping me so much," she said. "I wouldn't have survived this semester without you." "Are you kidding?" I grinned. "You're the reason I even understand half the material." She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes lingered just a second too long. My heart stumbled. For a moment, it felt like we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't name. But she broke the silence first. "See you tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded. "Of course." She smiled and walked away, her figure fading into the dim light of the campus. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, watching her go. Something inside me shifted that night. Maybe it was the way she smiled, or the way the cold air carried her scent, or maybe it was the way she made me want to be better, not just at studying, but at everything. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew one thing: I was in trouble. Because every time I looked at Ella, friendship started to feel like the hardest choice of all. The week before our English literature exam was chaos. Everyone on campus seemed to be living on caffeine and panic, but somehow Ella and I had found a rhythm. We spent every afternoon together, studying in the quiet corner of the library where sunlight streamed through tall windows. I'd always thought of studying as something you endured, not enjoyed, but with Ella it felt different. She had this calm energy that made even the most boring material feel meaningful. She'd explain things with such passion that I sometimes forgot we were supposed to be preparing for an exam at all. One afternoon, she showed up wearing her favorite oversized sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun, and I swear the entire room faded around her. She smiled when she saw me. "I brought us snacks," she said, holding up a paper bag. "You'd forget to eat if I didn't remind you." I grinned. "You're not wrong." We spent hours reviewing essays, quoting lines from novels, even quizzing each other. But somewhere between discussing Jane Austen and modern poetry, my mind wandered, not to the material, but to her. The way she laughed when I got something wrong, how her hand brushed mine when she passed me her notes, how every time she leaned closer to explain something, my heart picked up a beat. I wanted to tell her. Every cell in my body screamed to say it, to tell her that I'd fallen for her, that friendship wasn't enough anymore. But I couldn't. What if she didn't feel the same? What if saying it ruined everything we had? That thought terrified me more than failing the exam. That evening, as we packed our things, she looked at me and said, "Hey, you're really improving." "I'm proud of you, Jake." My heart flipped. "Only because you're a good teacher," I replied, trying to sound casual. She smiled softly. "We make a good team." We walked out together into the golden light of sunset. The air smelled of rain, and the campus was quiet except for the rustle of leaves. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt tight. Instead, I shoved my hands into my pockets and asked, "You ready for the exam?" "Almost," she said, laughing lightly, "though I might dream about grammar tonight." I chuckled, but inside, my chest ached with words left unspoken. Later that night, I sat in my dorm room, staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over her name in my messages. I typed, "There's something I need to tell you." Then I deleted it. Typed again, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Deleted that too. My heart knew what it wanted, but my head wouldn't let it happen. The next day, we met for one final study session. It was late. The library was almost empty. We sat across from each other, surrounded by stacks of books and half-empty coffee cups. She was reading, her lips moving silently with the words, and I couldn't stop watching her. When she finally looked up, she caught me staring. "What?" she asked, smiling. I froze. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About what?" She tilted her head, curious. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I wanted to say you. I wanted to tell her that I'd fallen for her laugh, her kindness, her determination. That every moment with her felt like a story I never wanted to end. But I didn't. I just smiled weakly. "About how glad I am we studied together." Her smile widened. "Me too," she said softly. "I'm really going to miss this after exams." That word, miss, hit me harder than it should have. It made me realize that soon, all of this would end. The late-night study sessions, the shared coffees, the inside jokes. What would we be after the exam? Just classmates again? The thought made my stomach twist. When we finished, I walked her back to her dorm like always. The air was cool, the sky scattered with stars. Halfway there, she slipped her arm through mine without thinking, just for warmth, but the touch sent electricity through me. I thought about stopping her before she went inside, about finally saying what had been burning inside me for weeks. But when she turned to me at her door and smiled, I couldn't do it. "Good night, Jake," she said softly. "Good night, Ella," I replied, forcing a smile. "You'll do great tomorrow." She nodded and disappeared inside. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the closed door, hating myself for staying silent. That was the night I realized something painful, that love unspoken can be louder than words. I told myself there would be another chance, another moment to tell her how I felt. But deep down, I knew I'd just missed the perfect one. After the exam, everything changed. It wasn't sudden, like a fight or a goodbye. It was quiet, like the slow fading of a song. Ella and I still saw each other on campus, but not every day. The library table where we used to sit stayed empty now, except for the occasional student passing by. We'd wave, smile, say, "Hi," but it wasn't the same. I told myself it was normal, that we were just busy, that things would go back to how they were. But deep down, I knew we were drifting. The silence between us grew wider, and every time I saw her talking with someone else, laughing, my chest tightened with something I didn't want to name. One day, a week after the results were posted, I ran into her outside the student center. She looked different, happier, lighter. "Jake," she called, her smile bright. "We both passed. Can you believe it?" I grinned, pretending I hadn't already checked my grade 3 times. "I told you your tutoring worked," I said. She laughed. "I guess we made a good team after all." But the words stung now. We made. Past tense. I wanted to ask if she wanted to celebrate, to grab coffee like old times, but before I could, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her smile changed, softer, distracted. "Sorry, I promised I'd meet someone," she said. "Maybe another time?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, of course." I watched her walk away, phone pressed to her ear, her laugh fading into the distance. That was the moment I realized how much space had grown between us, space filled with things I never said. Days turned into weeks. The semester ended, summer began, and we went our separate ways. I got a part-time job at a cafe near campus. She went home to visit family. Sometimes I'd scroll through her social media late at night, seeing pictures of her at the beach, with friends, smiling at the camera. She looked so happy. I should have been happy for her, but all I could think about was how far she felt now. One afternoon, while wiping tables at work, I looked up and froze. There she was, Ella, standing at the counter, wearing that same calm smile that used to undo me. "Jake," she said, surprised. "You work here?" "Yeah," I replied, laughing awkwardly. "Trying to make enough money for next semester's books." "That's great," she said, stepping closer. "I missed our study sessions." My heart skipped. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Me too." There was a pause, soft but full of unspoken things. Then she ordered her coffee, and we talked for a few minutes like old friends, nothing more. But when she left, she turned and waved. "See you around." "Definitely," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Seeing her again had stirred everything I tried to bury. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe there was still a chance to tell her what I felt. The next morning, I wrote her a message. "Coffee tomorrow?" My treat. My finger hovered over the send button. But before I could press it, another message popped up from her, one that shattered me a little. "Hey, Jake. Guess what? I just got accepted into the study abroad program in Italy. I leave next month." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "That's amazing, Ella. I'm so proud of you." And I meant it. I was proud. But behind the words, my heart whispered the truth I'd never say aloud. I was proud, but I was also losing her. The weeks before Ella left felt like a countdown I didn't want to watch. Every day that passed was one day closer to goodbye, one less chance to say what I had never said. I told myself I'd find the right moment, that I wouldn't let her leave without knowing how I felt, but life has a way of slipping through your fingers when you're not ready. We started meeting again, this time not to study but to talk, to make the most of what time we had left. We'd sit on the campus lawn with iced coffee, watching students rush by, pretending everything was normal. She talked about Italy with the kind of excitement that was contagious, how she'd live in a small apartment near the university, how she couldn't wait to see art, hear the language, and eat real pasta. I listened, smiling, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. "You're really going to do it," I said one afternoon, watching the sunlight dance in her hair. "You're actually going to live your dream." She laughed. "You make it sound like I'm leaving forever." "Aren't you?" I said it like a joke, but it didn't sound funny. She looked at me, her smile fading just a little. "I'll come back, Jake. It's just a year." I nodded, forcing a grin. "Right. A year." We both fell silent, letting the wind fill the space between us. I wanted to tell her that a year without her felt like forever. But I couldn't. Every time I tried to speak, fear stopped me. What if she didn't feel the same? What if telling her ruined what little time we had left? So instead, I did what I always did. I stayed quiet and hoped she could somehow read the truth in my eyes. A few days before her flight, she invited me to a small goodbye party at her apartment. There weren't many people, just close friends, laughter, and the smell of pizza and candles. She looked beautiful that night, wearing a simple white dress and that same calm smile that had undone me from the start. When the others left, she walked me to the door. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. "I'm really going to miss you." "You'll have an amazing time," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "Italy won't know what hit it." She laughed, and for a moment it felt like everything was the same again. Then the laughter faded, and she looked at me with that gentle seriousness that always made my heart race. "Jake," she said quietly, "you've been such a good friend. You always made me feel understood." I swallowed hard. Friend. The word cut deeper now. I wanted to tell her that she was more than that to me, that she'd become the best part of my every day. But before I could find the courage, she stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't just a friendly hug. It was long, warm, and full of something unspoken. When she pulled away, her eyes glistened, and she smiled. "Don't forget me, okay?" "Impossible," I said, my voice barely steady. She waved as I walked down the hall, and I didn't look back. I couldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, and finally opened a blank message. "Ella, I need to tell you something before you go." I stared at the words, then erased them. Again. And again. In the end, I didn't send anything. I just scrolled through our old messages until my eyes blurred. The next morning, I went to the airport. I didn't tell her I was coming. I just needed to see her one last time. From a distance, I watched her standing at the gate, suitcase beside her, smiling as she talked to another passenger. She looked so full of life, so ready for everything ahead. When she turned, for a brief second, her eyes met mine. She looked surprised, but then she smiled, and that smile said everything words couldn't. She waved, I waved back, and then she was gone. As I walked out of the terminal, I realized I'd never told her I loved her. But maybe she already knew. A year passed, but it didn't feel like just 12 months. It felt like a lifetime. Ella and I stayed in touch, sending messages every few weeks, sometimes a photo, sometimes just a line like, "I miss our coffee talks." I tried to move on, to focus on my studies, my job, my future. But every time I saw her name on my screen, my heart still raced the same way. I didn't tell her that, of course. Some truths are too fragile to send through a text. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I got her message, "I'm back." Just 2 words, but they hit harder than any poem we'd ever studied. My hands shook as I typed back, "When can I see you?" She replied almost instantly, "Tomorrow." I barely slept that night. The next day, I went to the cafe where we used to study, the same table by the window, 2 coffees waiting. When she walked in, for a moment, everything else disappeared. She looked older somehow, not by years, but by experience. Sun-kissed from Italian summers, confident, glowing. "Jake," she said, smiling, "you look the same." "You don't," I said honestly. "You look happier." She laughed softly. "Maybe I am." We talked for hours, like no time had passed. She told me about her students, her adventures, how she'd gotten lost in Rome and found her favorite bookshop in Florence. I listened, completely lost in her voice, but part of me kept thinking, this time, don't stay silent. When we stepped outside, the sky was turning pink, and the world felt lighter. She turned to me and said, "It's strange. Being back feels familiar, but different. Everything changed while I was gone." "Not everything," I said quietly. She looked up, meeting my eyes. "What do you mean?" My heart pounded, but I didn't look away. "I mean, I still feel the same," I said. "About you." For a second, she didn't say anything. The world went still. No voices, no cars, just the sound of my heartbeat. Then she smiled, softly, beautifully. "I was hoping you'd say that," she whispered. "Because I do too." I laughed, part disbelief, part relief. "You do." "Jake," she said, stepping closer, "you were the hardest part of leaving, and the best part of coming back." She reached for my hand, and it felt like everything I'd been waiting for finally made sense. No more missed chances, no more silence, just us, standing there, choosing something real. That night, as we walked under the fading light, she rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to begin. It already had. Sometimes love doesn't need grand gestures or perfect timing. It just needs 2 people brave enough to speak when the moment finally comes. And this time I did.